Okay. Good evening. And welcome to everyone who's joining us on the internet. Well, I mentioned last week that the ego will take whatever the Course says and use it for its purposes. And it will take things I have to say and use it for its purposes. And indeed, this has happened. And so there are a couple of things I want to be very clear about again. First off, when I gave these very spiritual words to be used to dismiss the invitation received, and I will not make Paul say the words again, but the words were F off. Many of you, after having heard it and then remembering back to what I said, remembered me saying, F you. And there's a great difference between F you and F off. F you is a curse that you are specifically directing toward a person, whereas F off is a dismissal. And that was the pure and simple intent of the statement. Misunderstanding it, though, and thinking it was a statement F you, many have thought that I was giving permission, especially in light of all I said about honesty, that it gave you license to call each other on each other's shit. Point out their flaws, point out their errors, and clearly express how you felt about it. Now, this is nothing more than careless and sloppy thinking and careless listening. And I invite you to listen more attentively to what I'm saying, because I am speaking very clearly. And I am saying exactly what I mean. The statement, the dismissal, F off, was a dismissal to an invitation. In other words, I was speaking in very narrow terms here. It was a dismissal of an invitation extended to you mentally. In other words, where you can feel the pull, whether the person is in your presence or not. You can feel the invitation to be drawn in, to help them feel better without having to change the behavior they are expressing, which is occasioning their suffering. And, very specifically, an invitation from someone who is taking pleasure in keeping you and anyone else they can at a disadvantage. I referred to it as sin. One, and let's listen carefully, one who takes pleasure in putting another at a disadvantage for the purposes of usury, for the purposes of manipulation, for the purposes of control. One who takes pleasure in this and is committed to this kind of behavior is not suffering from sickness, they are suffering from sin. When an invitation or a ploy or a pull is extended toward you, by someone who is wanting to engage you in a position of deception which will put you at a disadvantage, you must decline the invitation. I did not say you should curse them. You must decline the invitation. You must say, I am not available for this tug of war. I am not available for this state of conflict you would invite me into. And it would be a state of conflict because what you're inviting me into has a motive behind it different from what you are saying to me. I am not available for this, except that you must decline the invitation in as absolute terms as you can muster. And that is why I used the dismissal, F off, a decline of the invitation, not a curse on the person. Now, I also made it very clear that in the last couple of chapters or sections that we've been reading, we have not arrived at a point yet where it is telling you how to effect a change in another, even though we are discussing how to be an agent for change, how to respond to a call for love, how to respond to a call for help that actually helps. We have not arrived yet at a point of extension toward the other. We are still talking about what you, within your own mind, are going to do in order to be an effective agent for change. Now, most of you are familiar with the Shakespeare's statement, "To thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man." Okay, so we're reading about responding to a call for love. And in effect, we're talking about how you can respond without being false in any way. That's what we're talking about. And the question is, how do you manage to talk to your fellow man and not be false in any way? Well, it isn't from book learning. It isn't from theories. It's from a simple practice. Be true to yourself. Know where you're coming from. Be conscious enough of your own behavior to know whether you're coming from a manipulative place, whether you're coming from a controlling place, whether in your attempt to help you have an agenda, a personal agenda of your own, which you would engage your brother or sister in so that they're getting better is to your advantage, for example, you see. Or so that their healing has a reasonable amount of justice included in it so that they pay a reasonable penalty, you see. That's not innocence on your part. That's being unconscious yourself of what your real motive must be if you are the direct expression of God and nothing less. As I said last time, we're talking about, at this point, getting your own head on straight. And so, we aren't discussing, in any way, shape, or form, looking out there at another and calling him on his shit, or uncovering his flaws and proving his deceit. We're not talking about acts on your part effecting a change on a brother. We'll get to that part, but that's not where we're at right now. And what I said had nothing to do with giving you license to express your best perception of what's going on, and to do an analysis of your brother's psyche, and come to conclusions, and then attack him or her on the basis of your assessment. Before you open your mouth when you are talking to a brother or a sister, ask yourself, would God be saying this to them? Would the Christ be saying this to them? Would the Holy Spirit say what I'm about to say? If you don't ask that question, then all you're doing is coming from your own best judgments, and you are doing it unjoined and unconscious of your inseparable unity with God, with the Christ, with the Holy Spirit. And so you are behaving, I'm going to say, in a state of denial of what you divinely are, blocking completely your capacity to reflect God, to reflect love that heals. You're covering yourself up and giving preference to the picture you have of yourself that is replacing what you divinely are. And you are being dishonest. So when I'm talking about expressing yourself honestly, I'm talking about you expressing yourself with a capital S honestly. Not you, who you think you are, expressing the way you think you feel from a separated place, truly, straightforwardly, bluntly. That will never heal. Because what comes from you does not come from a union. It does not come from a communion. It comes from a separate, private place, from something that exists only in your imagination, and the only thing that will ever do is cause and promote and confirm confusion for you and those around you, unless they are really alert in your presence. So let's be very clear on this. Being honest means behaving, acting out from that which is truly you, underneath and behind any concepts, any pictures you have of yourself. It's you speaking from your connectedness with what you divinely are. And so, we're still talking about, we're still reading about, consciously giving your attention in that direction and then listening to see what the response would be. And the response will never be a curse on your brother or your sister. On the other hand, you can count on it that it will be a dismissal in your own mind of any temptation that comes your way, inviting you to acknowledge in your brother and sister something that is not representative of what they truly are, and which invites you to participate in trying to accomplish what can't be accomplished. When that is done, from the very center of your being to the best of your ability, I'm going to say, the one whose invitation is being dismissed will have to work real hard to feel personally dismissed or snubbed in the process. Because it will be impossible for him to find in you an edge, a hurtfulness, or even a satisfaction in being able to deliver hurt. Which is another way of describing extracting justice out of the situation. Okay, let's go into the book. Having taught you to accept only loving thoughts in others, and to regard everything else as an appeal for help, He, the Holy Spirit, has taught you that fear is an appeal for help. This is what recognizing it really means. If you do not protect it, the fear, He will reinterpret it. That is the ultimate value to you in learning to perceive attack as a call for love. And again, to be perfectly clear, if you, having experienced a call for love that has come forth as that which invites fear, if you do not protect it, He, the Holy Spirit, will reinterpret it to you, to help you not take the bait, to see it as something other than a call for help, to help you not take the bait, to see it as attack and respond in a like manner with defense. He will reinterpret it to you in your own mind. That is the ultimate value to who? To you, not the one who's making the call for help. That is the ultimate value to you in learning to perceive attack as a call for love. You see, we're talking about what's going on in your mind. We have learned surely that fear and attack are inevitably associated. If only attack produces fear, And if you see attack as the call for help that it is, the unreality of fear must dawn upon you. You see, someone expresses himself in a frightful way, expressing a great deal of fear or expressing ideas that invite you to become fearful. If you listen to what is said and you choose to believe that something fearful is happening, you will completely forget that there is another way to look at this and to see it as a call for love from one who has forgotten who he is and forgotten what his connections are, his unchangeable oneness with God, who loves him with a perfect love that casts out fear. If you see attack as the call for help that it is, the unreality of fear must dawn upon you. Why? Because you can see that there is delusion going on here, not something real. And you can see that the one who is deluded is really the Christ, really the Son of God, having forgotten who he or she is, and in the lapse of memory feels the loss of identity, which is frightening, is unsettling. And when you see that, then whatever that one is presenting becomes meaningless in light of what the truth is about them. You see? For fear is a call for love in unconscious recognition of what has been denied. Tell me, why would any of you ever feel afraid? Well, because you're attempting to be something you cannot be. You're attempting to be an orphan. You're attempting to be independent. You're attempting to be as a soul, S-O-L-E, operator, which isn't what you are. You're attempting to be something you cannot be. You are part of the brotherhood. You are part of everything. And everything is part of you. You are a wholeness and a part of wholeness, you might say. You have the capacity to experience yourself infinitely and specifically, simultaneously. But if you try to experience yourself specifically at the expense of your infiniteness, which is an impossibility, you will feel uncomfortable at the attempt, uneasy at the attempt. Why? Because the truth of you, the wholeness of you, that can't be excluded even if you try to give your attention so specifically to one small aspect of the infinity of you. Confronts you. The infinitude of you confronts you even in your attempt to be tiny. It pushes for, it calls for your conscious re-embrace of the rest of you. It calls you with insistence to abandon your denial of all the rest of you, to abandon your attempt to narrow your attention down to the minuscule. Why? Because you cannot successfully become insane. And so what you divinely are pressures you in your highly focused attentiveness to abandon the high focus, the narrowed focus. The greater part of you says, you can't forget me. And because you are whole and you can't forget your wholeness, you will experience your wholeness right in the middle of your tiny focus as a pressure, as something that does not feel natural to you to get your attention. Fear is a call for love in unconscious recognition. In other words, in the presence of the pressure of your wholeness that you have repressed from your awareness, which is called an unconscious recognition. It's felt, but you can't quite identify it because you have repressed it so successfully. Fear is a call for love in unconscious recognition of what has been denied, in unconscious recognition of the rest of the infinitude of you that you are denying by giving preference to the highly focused, tiny attention which you are occupying your mind with. You see, when an event happens in your day and you respond to it based upon your memory and your best judgments, without ever tapping into the rest of you that is present, without ever inquiring of the Holy Spirit, what is the truth here? Your private response is an active denial of your divinity, of the wholeness of you, that it's really your birthright to be experiencing and expressing. You're leaving God out, which is another way of saying you're leaving the Holy Spirit out, which is another way of saying you're leaving out that which is nothing more than your right mind. But when you do, you never feel totally at peace. Why? Because the pressure of what you divinely are will not let you be totally comfortable. It is impossible for you to be totally comfortable in your own private perception of the kingdom of heaven. The next section is entitled The Mechanism of Miracles. Fear is a symptom of your deep sense of loss. Loss of what? The rest of you. The other 98% of you that you are ignoring by giving preference to the 2% you're choosing to look at and validate and define, you see.